StudyIQ IAS, आपका सिलेक्शन हमारा मिशन.
Be it any exam, be it any course that you're doing, be it anything that you're preparing for, one of the most important English poet that we have is William Wordsworth. Today, I, Dr. Anamta Rizvi, a UPSC English literature educator, would be discussing about a very important poet, and that is William Wordsworth. As we know, William Wordsworth का जब नाम आता है, the age that clicks in our mind is romantic age. We know that romantic age was a time जहाँ पे एक aristocratic elite society से it was a major shift from that society to experiences of a common man. This is exactly what William Wordsworth always wanted to do with his work, to talk about the ordinary human experiences and not just give focus on a particular elite aristocratic class. So today we will be discussing about William Wordsworth. We will be talking about Tintern Abbey, one of the most important poems that is there in a UPSC exam as well as any other exam that you have. However, UPSC में ये पूरा full-fledged poem है and इसी के pattern में questions आते हैं along with many other William Wordsworth poems. So if you are going ahead with UPSC English Literature optional, guys, this would be a very important class for all of you to get an idea about Wordsworth, about Tintern Abbey, and of course what sort of questions UPSC asked and how you are supposed to attempt them. Alright, so let's go ahead with our class. William Wordsworth, Major Works and UPSC Exam Trends. Now, the first part, this lesson is divided into 3 parts. The first part that we have is the Wordsworthian ethos. Teachers, I'll be briefing you about how exactly it is. So William Wordsworth isn't just nature poet in the UPSC context. He is the architect of the Romantic Revolution. Now, this is very important, guys. In 1798, William Wordsworth, along with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, published Lyrical Ballet. उसमें एक preface include किया था. That preface, in a way, became the manifesto of Romantic Age. Why? Because it emphasized upon the ordinary human experiences. It was a major paradigm shift. Sorry, guys. He moved poetry away from the artificial 18th century heroic couplets that focused only on the elite class, aristocratic class. And by that, we of course mean the likes of Alexander Pope, John Dryden, and so on. So it kind of had a major shift from heroic couplets of Pope and Dryden towards a language that was really used by men, the common language. जब हम Tintern Abbey पढ़ते हैं और On Intimations of Immortality पढ़ते हैं या Michael पढ़ते हैं, कोई भी poem ले Wordsworth के, you will be able to easily understand the poem. Why? It is written in common language. The concept of pantheism. What is pantheism? That we can see God in nature. When you're able to see God in nature, that is pantheism. और Wordsworth का बहुत ही important philosophy था. So for Wordsworth, nature is not just scenery. It is living soul, a moral guardian, and a nurse. Okay, so what is a nurse? That nature is a nurse. That helps, heals us, that soothes us, that takes care of us, and in which he's able to see the reflection of divinity. Ahab's theory of poetry, for emphasize his definition from preface, is very important, guys, because it is spontaneous overflow of powerful imagination. That is exactly what Wordsworth always talked about in his work, and we can see immense imagination in his work, reflections, and the way he addresses his childhood memories. That is something to worth look out for. So yes, we will be talking about those aspects. All right, so lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey. I'm particularly taking this poem. It's a very important work. बहुत सारे poems हैं आपके course में. However, this is one important poem that let's discuss. और इसी के base पे हम questions पूछेंगे just to understand UPSC के subjective questions कैसे होते हैं and how to approach them. So the poem is a spiritual autobiography. In miniature, it records the poet's psychological and spiritual evolution over 5 years, that is 1793 to 1798. This time, Wordsworth was fairly young. Uski poetic abilities ban rahi thi. So this is the period when he kind of wrote this work, and this is what a spiritual autobiography, rooted in nature, rooted in the aspect wherein he was able to, his sensibilities were growing at that time. So spiritual autobiography isko bola jata hai. It is 3 stages of growth. So it is a very structured work. 3 stages of categorical उसने पूरा mention किया, उसने 3 stages of growth. So Wordsworth outlines how his relationship with nature changed as he matured. So stage 1 में क्या देखते हैं? हर स्टेज का एक अपना थीमेटिक कंसर्न है. स्टेज 1 में the animal physical stage, that is the boyhood, when he was a young boy, when he was just carefree, nonchalant, no responsibilities, having fun in nature. So nature was a source of coarser pleasure and glad animal movements. He ran through the woods, he had no fear, he had an absolutely casual nature, you know. So there was a boyhood. So boyhood mein jitna bhi you experience all the joys or the playfulness without any worries, that is the phase that he describes as glad animal movements, coarser pleasures through the woods, like man fleeing something, running about, wandering here and there without any remorse, without any, you know, responsibility sorts. Second is the aesthetic stage, that is the youth stage. Nature was a passion and an appetite. He loved the colors and forms of the mountains, but it was purely sensory. Over here, his senses started developing in a very sharp manner. He started appreciating everything that was around him. So as a kid, that was just a playful thing, something just to run about, just to enjoy. However, this is the stage, the part 2, the youth stage, wherein his sensibility started improving, sharpening, and he started realizing that everything around him is worth appreciating. Stage 3, that is the spiritual stage, and that is the stage of maturity. He now hears the still sad music of humanity. A very famous line, बहुत फेमस लाइन है टिंटन एबी की, still sad music of humanity. He senses a presence that disturbs him with the joy of elevated thoughts, a spirit that rolls through all things. So maybe he is able to sense that everything around him has a soul. The things that we sense that they do not have a soul, but he believes that there is something that is peculiar, something strange, that is beyond the understanding of a human being. So this is a stage wherein his spiritual aspects come. So Tintern Abbey, a beautiful work divided into 3 stages, that is boyhood, youth, and a spiritual stage, wherein is able to see ordinary things in an extraordinary way. So now the concept of tranquil restoration, a crucial point for UPSC, guys. This is important to understand. Even when Wordsworth was in lonely rooms or mid the din of towns, the memory of the Wye River provided him with. So basically, because Tintern Abbey is kind of written around the idea of Wye River. So यहाँ पे वो Wye River के बारे में सोच रहा है. He's thinking about that. And ऐसे टाइम पे when he is sad, when he is gloomy, when maybe he's engulfed by this remorse around him, just to think about that Wye River, that tranquility, that is the peace, the serenity of that nature, gave him the solace. So sensation, physical sweet sensations. So Wordsworth की जब हम poetry पढ़ते हैं, it actually appeals our senses. We are able to, actually imagine in such a way as if everything is around in front of us. That is how beautiful his work is. So in a way, sensation, physical sensations, morality, little nameless unremembered acts of kindness and of love, mysticism, the serene and blessed mood where the burden of the mystery is lighthearted and we see into the life of things. He's able to see the life of things, the vitality, the spirit that the things around him, the nature around him has. Okay, so that is how the beauty of nature gives him that serenity, peacefulness, that tranquility. So this is how it is. These are some important lines that I have included. Now, the role of Dorothy, the address. So this poem is addressed to whom? His sister, Dorothy. So now the final section is addressed to his sister, Dorothy. She represents his former self. जब वो खुद यंग था, डॉरथी उससे छोटी थी, उसकी बहन बहुत क्लोज अपनी बहन से. So उसका जो younger self वो डॉरथी में देखता था, he prays that nature will do for her what it did for him. So उसको पता है the way he's so deeply rooted with this beautiful nature, the way he's attached to nature, जहाँ से nature ने उसको इतना सिखाया है, like a teacher, उसको soothe किया है, like a nurse, उसी तरह he wishes the same for Dorothy, that may nature do exactly the same things to Dorothy as much as it's done to Wordsworth. So in a way he wants nature to act as a shield against evil tongues. This is how nature has helped him against evil tongues and the dreary intercourse of daily life. And you know how everything is, how the daily duties are. Kahan se peace milega? Nature se. So this is the reason, guys, that you know, for us, even in this materialistic world that we're living in this digital age that we're living in, there's so much emphasis on this idea of nature. Take a walk. कोई depression होता है, take a walk in nature, you will be fine. Doctors recommend करते हैं इसको. Wordsworth ने बहुत पहले बोल दिया था that nature is the one who teaches us, nature is the one who soothes us, takes care of us. So वो same wish करा Dorothy के लिए. So subjective question patterns, guys, this is important for all of us to understand कि UPSC में अगर questions आते हैं, everyone knows कि subjective questions होते हैं. Now that brings a very important point, and that is that make sure one thing, that हम कभी भी summary नहीं देते अपनी poetry की, never. UPSC is asking you an analytical idea of what that poem is talking about. You have to give a critical commentary. This is the reason understanding the poem is very important, just not to mug it up and summarize it and paraphrase करके हो गया. No. So what kind of questions come? For instance, so they require critical evaluation, guys. ये मैंने बहुत ही important लिखा है, so that you guys get an idea. A lot of students think कि summarize कर दिया poem को, enough. No. So for instance, the relationship between man and nature. ये जो है, ये बहुत quintessential question है, typical question है, जो कि repeatedly आ सकता है exam में और आ चुका है. So for instance, the question is, analyze Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey as a record of the poet's spiritual development. Talking about the third stage, right? So you have to attempt in an answer. Now you don't have to summarize the third stage. You have to gradually, in a flair of writing, go from how, very briefly, you will be talking about the boyhood and the youth, all right, in a very brief manner. फिर हमें एक elaborate तरीके से spiritual, उसका जो spiritual enlightenment था through nature, वो हमें करना है. So now discuss the transition from the physical glad animal movement, that is a small portion of boyhood, a small portion of youth, and then coming to the larger aspect of how you will be talking about and dealing with your spiritual development, to the philosophical still sad music of humanity. Okay, ये line आती है. So always remember that हमेशा मैं recommend करती हूँ, every poem has, there are particular lines that you must memorize, because even if you include 3 to 4 words के phrases be in your answer, it's going to give a very strong impact on the examiner. Okay, so this is one question that can come. The preface and poetic theory, to what extent does Wordsworth follow his own theories of poetic diction in Tintern Abbey? How he's structuring the words, how he's structuring the poem, because poetic diction पे उसने बड़ी बात की है अपने lyrical ballets में 1798 में. Now when we talk about this is one question that can come. The preface and poetic theory, to what extent does Wordsworth follow his own theories of poetic diction in Tintern Abbey? How he's structuring the words, how he's structuring the poem, because poetic diction पे उसने बड़ी बात की है अपने lyrical ballets में 1798 में. Now when we talk about your Wordsworth, it is taken for granted कि आपको lyrical ballet के बारे में पता होगा, क्योंकि Wordsworth की थ्योरी सारी की सारी lyrical ballet में जो 1798 में आया था उनके preface में. So we got to make sure that you know we add that element. अगर इस तरह का question आता है, we need to have an idea. Okay, so this is one question that can come. The preface and poetic theory, to what extent does Wordsworth follow his own theories of poetic diction in Tintern Abbey? How he's structuring the words, how he's structuring the poem, because poetic diction पे उसने बड़ी बात की है आपने lyrical ballads में 1798 में. Now when we talk about your Wordsworth, इट इज टेकन फॉर ग्रांटेड कि आपको लिरिकल बैले के बारे में पता होगा, क्योंकि वर्ड्सवर्थ की थ्योरी सारी की सारी लिरिकल बैले में जो 1798 में आए थे उनके प्रीफेस में. सो वी गॉट टू मेक श्योर दैट वी add that element. अगर इस तरह का क्वेश्चन आता है, we need to have an idea. So approach, now evaluate if the language that he's used is truly simple or if it uses the high romantic sublime style. तो अब क्योंकि poetic diction में उसने क्या बोला है, उसने बोला है कि make it simple. The structuring of the words needs to be very simple, does not need to be high flown, does not need to be very royal in its approach. So in that manner, what do you have to do? You have to make sure that it is how, like Tintern Abbey पे critical commentary देनी, what sort of language, how has it been written. Then you have another one, the inward eye and memory. So examine the role of memory, because Tintern Abbey is based on the idea of memory. बचपन की तो वो बात कर रहा है कि वाई रिवर में अपनी डॉरेथी बहन के साथ गया था. So examine the role of memory and recollection in tranquility in Wordsworth major lyrics. Okay, so this is major lyrics, मतलब Tintern Abbey के बारे में, या जितने भी इसकी बहुत सारे पोएम है, Ode Intimations of Immortality, कितने सारे वर्क्स उसकी मेमोरी पे बेस्ड है कि वो रिफ्लेक्ट करता है और उनके बारे में बात करता है. So use Tintern Abbey to show how the beauteous forms seen in the past act as a healing force in the present. So जो nature में वो रहा है इतना in his childhood, that gives him solace and the ability to combat the daily the busyness of life, the daily chores of life in his youth, in his old age as well. So this is something, again, a question does come. Then compare Wordsworth pantheism. Pantheism, his deep-rooted attachment with nature, to the extent that he feels as if divinity exists within this nature. Pantheism with the mystical elements that is found in Coleridge's poetry. So these are comparative question. Comparative question hardly आते हैं, नहीं आते हैं. UPSC is very direct with your text-based questions, poetry questions. But because Coleridge एक इतना integral part है, lyrical ballet साथ में लेके हो सकता है, but this is very rare. But still, it's good to just see and study and understand how can it be attempted. So contrast Wordsworth nature as God with Coleridge more supernatural and orthodox religious leanings. Coleridge is not in your course, but I will of course be giving you brief information कि Coleridge basically उसका जो idea था वो different था, वो supernatural था, थोड़ा mystical था, mysterious था, वो इस तरह से लिखता था. Wordsworth more simple, more rooted, more ordinary life पे emphasis था. So guys, this was my lesson on Wordsworth, on Tintern Abbey, and on the UPSC question that I asked. If you want a full detailed analysis of all the works, most welcome in my classes. Purchase the course. The course is only of rupees 13,999. Use my code ARLIVE. Talk to our executive, the sale executive. You can get more discounts on it. And everything is given in the description box, in the comment section. If you want, you can contact me also. You can write in the comment section. I can, of course, talk to you about how the course we will be approaching. So presently, we are doing our course on Wordsworth only. So if you want, enroll in the batch and I'll see you all in the class. Thank you, everyone.
StudyIQ IAS. आपका सिलेक्शन हमारा मिशन.